What's good, guys? Welcome back to another solo video. I know it's been a while since my last upload, but we had some big plans coming for 2024, so a small pause was needed. But today I'll be reviewing the top 10 best backstories in One Piece. Backstories in anime are crucial because they enhance character development, create emotional connections, enrich the world, drive the plot, etc. So why not rank the best backstories for an anime that's known for its tragic backstories? So let's start it off with a few honorable mentions. In no specific order, starting with Noland, definitely a forgotten backstory in One Piece since it was previewed quickly in Jaya. Noland was an honest and good man who was brave and cared about the people, just pushed his luck when mentioning a city entirely of gold, and it was a tale that costed him dearly. Senior Pink, when we first saw this man, we did nothing but mock and laugh at his character design, but after finding out about the loss of his child and his wife who turned into a vegetable, we did nothing but mourn with him. Frankie, a character's backstory who you could argue should be in the top 10, but I think it was just shy. Tom was a huge influence in Frankie's passion for building ships, and to watch him get killed in front of his eyes was heartbreaking. Big Mom, although a lot of people have mixed feelings about her character, you can't deny she has easily one of the most fitting backstories in the show, as she was an orphan with an immense appreciation who eventually ate everyone, including her caretaker, Mother Caramel, who was revealed to be a child trafficker. Finally, they both fall together in this backstory, Jinbei and Fisher Tiger. Both slaves escaped and just wanted peace between humans and fishermen. Sadly, Fisher Tiger died of blood loss after being ambushed by Marines, thinking that he was causing harm, when in reality, he was just freeing more slaves, one of them being later on down the road Koala. Now that we've concluded our honorable mentions, let's start the list off strong. At the 10th spot, we have Kairos. Kairos in his younger days lived in the slums and was taken in by the king to fight in the Colosseum because of his absurd strength, where he achieved over 1,000 victories in less than 4 months. Kairos was free to leave the Colosseum and continue his youth, but he told the king that everyone in Dressrosa already hated him and he saw no point in leaving because he viewed himself as a beast. The king saw his strength not as a liability but as an asset, and after many years later, with more victories accumulated in the Colosseum, the king appointed him captain of his Dressrosa army. The king had a daughter who fell in love with Kairos, and they decided to live in the outskirts of town and have a child named Rebecca. Kairos turned his life around from living in the slums, killing people, to becoming a captain of the kingdom, marrying the king's daughter, and having a daughter of his own. But he never forgot about his former self, and even refused to hold Rebecca unless wearing gloves not to sully her with his dark past. Everything was going well until Doflamingo invaded Dressrosa and started destroying everything in sight. Kairos sent his wife and daughter to hide in the flower fields while he went to go save the king. In the process, he lost his leg, was the first to become Sugar's victim in becoming a toy, and watched his wife get shot to death all in the span of an hour. To make matters worse, Sugar's ability makes people forget about you once you turn into a toy, and when Kairos took his wife's dead body to Rebecca, she resented him for not protecting her mom and hated him. Even after all these events, Kairos never gave up in freeing the kingdom and from Dofi's clutches, and created an underground movement to one day dethrone Doflamingo. Thankfully, Luffy came along and fixed everything, but Kairos' backstory runs pretty deep, and it's crazy that I don't hear the One Piece community talk enough about this backstory. At 9th, the Soul King himself, Brook. Brook was a part of the Rumbar Pirates as one of the many musicians that comprised most of the crew. One day in the West Blue, they came across a baby whale who had gotten lost. Brook suggested to his captain that they should play music to cheer up the whale, which was Binks no Sake, and that whale ended up being Laboon. They had to leave him just off the edge of the Grand Line because it was too dangerous for him to come with them. But the entire crew made a promise that they'll return one day and sing the song together. After leaving the West Blue and entering the Grand Line, Brook and his crew was struck with an incurable disease, which killed half of their crew, including the captain. Before the passing of the captain, he asked the remaining sickly crew members to send off with their favorite song, Binks no Sake. So as the entire crew is slowly withering away, they begin to sing Binks no Sake until nobody is left to sing. Knowing that Brook ate the Yomi Yomi no Mi, the captain asked Brook to keep the promise to Laboon. At this point, the entire crew is dead, and Brook was the last one to pass away, as he waits to be revived by his devil fruit powers. It actually had difficulty trying to find Brook's body because of the ship that was engulfed in fog due to the Grand Line's very difficult climate, where the devil fruit power did not find Brook until an entire year later. At that point, Brook was nothing but bones. After reviving Brook, he took his many crewmates' remains and stored it in the bottom of the ship. The ship's rudder had been broken in battle, and because there was no shipwright on board, Brook was stuck on the ship for a few decades doing nothing but moping the loss of his crew. When he slept, he would dream of waking up next to his crewmates again, but instead would wake up to the harsh reality that awaited him. The 50 years Brook spent stranded on the ship were very harsh and painful, and he deeply missed the company of others. Just knowing Brook was stranded by himself for decades places him in the 9th spot. At 8th, our favorite raccoon dog, Tony Chopper. Chopper, born as a reindeer, was an outcast amongst others for having a blue nose instead of a red one. And once he ate the Hito no Mi, they ostracized him. With Chopper's increased intelligence, he attempted to communicate and live amongst the humans, which wasn't easy because they commonly mistaken him for a Yeti and attempted to kill him. Chopper was rescued by the quack Dr. Hirlook, who named him and took him in as a friend and assistant. Although his deeds were of dubious medicine, Doctor became close friends with Chopper and his role model. Chopper's philosophy that all diseases could be cured stemmed from Dr. Hirlook, and the two went from house to house administering their cures in a country where all doctors were sanctioned. Dr. Hirlook was sick with an incurable disease, and when Chopper had heard about it, he took his books in hopes that he could venture and find a mushroom that could cure his beloved guardian. Unfortunately, the mushroom Chopper was seeking was actually poisonous, and he would actually speed up the death of Dr. Hirlook. Chopper returned with the mushroom in his hand, but was badly injured with a broken antler. Doctor, overwhelmed with tears of gratitude, ate the mushroom to show his love and appreciation for Chopper. Chopper would later find out from Dr. Correja that he had given his friend a fatal dose of poison. Chopper calls her a liar, but she assures him it's the truth. Dr. Correja explains that being kind was not enough to save lives. You need to actually study medicine and go through proper training before you can even think about saving others. Dr. Hiroko decides to unalive himself by drinking a liquid that would make him explode instead of dying from the poison that Chopper had given him. Before passing, he shouts that he lived a wonderful life and doesn't regret anything before drinking up. From that day forward, Chopper had declared that he himself would be the all-purpose cure for everything, and studied how to be a doctor seriously through Dr. Correja. Dr. Hiroko was definitely the GOAT of Drum Island, but it didn't overshadow Chopper's tearfully devastating backstory. At 7th, the most fitting backstory in One Piece, the heavenly demon himself, Doflamingo. As his family was born in the comfort of Mary Joie, adopting the title of World Noble, Doflamingo's father decided to give up the title and live well off with everybody else, until the people resented them due to their long-standing hatred for the World Nobles. From there, it was history. Doflamingo and his family living on the streets eating garbage, lynched and severely beaten, to his mother passing away from an illness, to the nobles rejecting them after asking to return. Everything just kept piling up on top of each other. One day, Doflamingo, Corazon, and his father were strung up to a wall being beaten and abused, and Doflamingo just snapped. Young Dofi shouts during his absolute lowest point in life, "I will survive the worst you can throw at me. I will hunt you down and kill each and every last one of you." Corazon states that he was born with an innate evil nature that knows no bounds, and he was most definitely correct. At the age of 10, Doflamingo killed his father and carried his head in an attempt to regain his old status as a world noble that was rejected as one of a family of traitors by the celestial dragons. Who is sane enough to carry the head of his loving father just to regain a status of a celestial dragon? Without a doubt, an insanely fitting backstory for an absolutely evil character like Doflamingo. Number 6 is a new one. Now, this backstory has shot up in the ranks because of the most recent chapters of One Piece. So if you aren't caught up to chapter 1103, click away to this timestamp or I'm about to spoil the entire backstory for you. Kuma was born into a now extinct slave race called Buccaneers. Even though half Buccaneer, he was forced into being a slave for celestial dragons at the age of 4 since his race was absurdly strong. Oda did not state how, but his mother passed away when he was young. But his dad always told Kuma to never give up and to wait for the warrior of liberation who was to come and set everyone free, the sun god Nika. While Kuma's dad was telling him the story, one of these celestial dragons walked in and gunned down Kuma's dad and walked away like nothing happened, all while Kuma was right there to witness it. A couple years later, and now Kuma's the victim of a customary celestial dragon manhunt, where he's supposed to run around the island like a rabbit and try not to get killed. During this manhunt, he runs into other slaves, Ivankov and Ginny, who planned on stealing the prize pool for the event, which was devil fruits, which they managed to do successfully and escape the crazy event. After the God Valley incident, Ivankov leaves Kuma and Ginny to live on their own while she adventures in the sea, but for the first time in Kuma's life, he's a free man. Kuma and Ginny spend years together in a town looking after everybody, ensuring nobody dies. Ivankov ends up coming back and with the early stages of the Revolutionary Army, where they spend 8 years helping them. Somehow, Ginny was caught by the Navy, given to a celestial dragon to get married, and died of an incurable disease. In between the time she was away from the Revolutionary Army, Ginny conceived a child who we know as today Jewelry Bonnie. Sadly, the disease that caught Ginny was passed down to Bonnie too, and Kuma had until Bonnie turned the age of 10 to figure out exactly how to save her. Kuma travels the entire globe to figure out a solution, but could not come up with anything. And that's where he meets Dr. Vegapunk. Sadly, Kuma was ultimately forced to give up his free will and mind by having himself cloned and turned into a robot. But Kuma gladly accepted the conditions to allow Bonnie to live. And surely enough, he gave up his own life just to allow Bonnie to live. Definitely the most selfless person in One Piece. And to think Oda could still cook up a backstory like this 1,000+ chapters later is mental. We finally entered the top 5, and coming in strong at number 5 is cat burglar Nami. Nami, a subject of war, ended up an orphan and adopted by Bellemere, a marine at the time, where she took Nami and Nokiji home and raised them as her own. Nami developed a love for drawing maps and navigations and the dream to draw a complete map of the world. However, Bellemere's tangerine trees provide only meager means of support, and they were unable to afford anything other than the bare necessities. The hard times usually never got to the kids, and Bellemere tried her best to support them regardless if she had to starve or just eat tangerines for the day. But one day, Nami was given Nokiji's hand-me-downs. Nami was offended because she wanted clothes of her own. This spiraled into an argument which made Nami call Nokiji not a true sister, which led Bellemere into slapping Nami. Nami ran into the town wishing that she was born into a richer family. While the three were split up, Arlong and his crew just arrived on the island, taxing everyone in order to live, and if you had a child you'd have to pay extra. When Arlong pulled up on Bellemere's door, she tried to take him down, but his fistman's strength was too much for her and she got curb stomped. Bellemere and Genzo tricked Arlong into thinking she had no kids, so she'd only have to pay for herself. Bellemere forks up the money, but says the money is only for her 2 kids. Bellemere loved those 2 way too much that she didn't even have the courage to lie about it. And because of that, Arlong shot her right in the forehead, and Nami watched the whole thing unfold. The fishman decided to take Nami along because of her impressive mapping skills at her young age. Arlong then fools Nami into thinking that if she collects 100 million berries, he'll release her and the village from his clutches. So Nami slaves away her youth working for Arlong and stealing across the East Blue just to pay off Arlong and his goons. From watching her adopted mother die in front of her before she could get closure, to having your island taken over by a fishman and your youth stolen from you, Nami was going through it. But tough times create tough people, and Nami is no pushover, so she comfortably holds the spot for 5th. This backstory is probably number 1 for a lot of you, but for me it's a calm 4th for none other than Nico Robin. Robin was raised amongst archaeologists because her mother was a famous archaeologist herself who studied a lot into history and stumbled upon the government's dirty past and ended up learning something they shouldn't have. Robin and the other archaeologists all managed to learn and decode ancient writings on the poneglyphs. Due to this, the government declared a buster call and started killing everyone, including traces of the island and the books associated with history. Thankfully, Robin befriended a giant who stumbled upon the island named Sol. Sol, along with the help of Aokiji, allowed Robin to escape, but left her alone to survive. Sol taught Robin that during these tough times, it's good to try to smile and laugh it off. So while sending her off, she was just crying and laughing as she watches her island and family she was raised in get completely decimated. The government somehow noticed that she escaped and put a bounty of 80 million berries on a child. Robin was constantly running from ship to house to island, getting betrayed left and right by random civilians trying to claim her big bounty. This gave Robin severe trust issues, which stuck with her for a long while until she met Luffy. But to have your entire family and island destroyed for no reason, on top of having to be on the run from the government, is unjust. They labeled Robin as a devil child. It's not that serious. I mean, maybe it is. Still wanting to figure out what happened in the void century though, that the government is so desperately attempting to cover up. But without a doubt, this was such a heartbreaking backstory for Robin. Another more recent backstory coming in from Wano Island at 3rd place, Kozuki Odin.
What? Odin over Nami and Robin?
Shh. Yes, Andrew, calm down. I see you already typing your complaint in the comments. Odin's backstory will always be a staple in the anime community for just the way everything played out. Since Odin was an infant, there was no other words to describe him but menace. Drinking booze, killing boars with boulders, catching rabbits with his bare hands, visiting the red light district, throwing nurses around the room, all these stats even before he reached the age of 8 years old. Odin caused so much trouble throughout the capital that they actually imprisoned him for his crimes, where he learned to reform his ways. Odin always wanted to leave Wano and travel to sea, and attempted to do so 38 times, but was stopped each time. At the age of 18, Odin was banished from the capital for almost destroying it with a boar attack, and during his banishment, he created the 9 Scabbards and managed to escape the island of Wano and join Whitebeard's crew to sail the seas and live life to the fullest. During his departure though, Orochi and Kaido were busy scheming on how to take over the capital, and by the time Odin returned, it was already in full effect. Odin managed to get his way to Kaido and Orochi, but they already had the capital in their clutches, and the only way that they'd spare the people in Odin is if he danced once a week in the middle of the capital, butt naked for 5 years. And surely enough, that's exactly what Odin did. Once a week, he went and danced in the capital, naked, for everyone to see, just so that everyone would be spared. But nobody knew the agreements besides Odin, Orochi, and Kaido, and the people of Wano began to lose faith in Odin as they watched him make a fool of himself weekly. Obviously, Odin was taken advantage of and the deal wasn't upholded, so Odin retaliated, but it's Kaido, he's not going to end up beating Kaido. Odin and the 9 Scabbards execution date was set, but Odin made a deal with Kaido. If everyone survived the boiling pot of 700 degrees for an entire hour, he'll let them go. Kaido agreed to the terms. Odin lifted a plank above his shoulders and carried the 9 Scabbards the entire time. During the process, the citizens heard how Odin protected them all these years, and they all started cheering for Odin's efforts. Talk about fake fans. As Odin survived the entire hour, he threw the Scabbards to safety, but he was still ordered to execution and was shot in the middle of the head by Kaido himself. But before dying, he asked the Scabbards to one day open the borders of Wano before dying with a smile on his face. These selfless backstories really warm up my heart. Seeing someone go to like Odin perish like this definitely hurt, but worthy enough to jump to the 3rd spot for sure. Honestly, no introduction needed for this GOAT. Number 2, Vinsmoke Sanji. Vinsmoke Judge, Sanji's dad, decided he would have 4 children but genetically enhance all of them before birth to make them have superhuman abilities and no emotions, thus turning them into perfect soldiers in the future. Fortunately, Sanji's mother Sora was against this practice and while still pregnant took a drug that would ensure they grow as normal humans with emotions. This intent resulted successfully only for Sanji, at the cost of severely weakening her own health beyond repercussion, which led to an early death for her. Since Sanji was the only human out of the 4, he always lagged behind and Judge always treated him like a failed experiment. Due to this, the other 3 siblings got special treatment while Sanji was constantly harassed, abused, and violated to the point where Judge tried to erase his existence by putting a metal mask and locking him up in a dungeon to starve. While in this dungeon for 6 months, he would read about a cookbook which would later help inspire him to cook. Sanji declared to his sister who came to visit him that he wanted to leave and become a chef. Riju felt bad for Sanji and decided to break him out of the cell and let him escape. While escaping, Judge runs into Sanji and says he'll allow him to leave under one condition, that he'll never tell anyone about their relationship. 2 years later, 10-year-old Sanji is working as a ship cook on orbit, until Red Leg Zeph, a pirate and his crew attacked the ship. However, both were caught in a sudden storm and sank. Zeph managed to save young Sanji from drowning, and the two washed up on a rock outcropping high above the seas. For weeks, the two sat on opposite sides of the rock, waiting for a ship to pass, crying for help, struggling to eat their leftover meals. Now when Sanji runs out of food, he tries to take Zeph's to find out Zeph's portion was actually just treasure, and Zeph's been eating his leg this whole time to survive. Zeph confessed that he often lacked food on the high seas and planned on opening a restaurant on the seas. Sanji, guilty over plotting to kill Zeph, agreed to help, but Zeph remarked that he was too weak. Soon after, a ship appeared and they were spared from death. Because of this ordeal, Sanji pledged to never refuse food to a starving individual, no matter how evil or poor they may be. For Sanji to go from one traumatic moment to another within 10 years is diabolical from Oda's side. How do you even decide to torture a child this much? No question, this is objectively the greatest backstory in One Piece and possibly anime. Taking the #1 spot by Trafalgar D. Water Law. My man Law genuinely learned the meaning of suffering. Law was born into a country that was known for mining white minerals that kept everyone wealthy, including his successful doctor parents, who were likewise training him. The ore that had been mined and ran through the entire country ended up having deadly lead poisoning, and all the doctors struggled to find a cure for it, so the government decided to quarantine the entire island by killing them all off. Law manages to avoid being killed and hides under dead bodies being shipped outside the city. Law became nihilistic and omnicidal, wishing to destroy as much of the world as he could without believing in anything anymore. From there, he arrived at Port Town, where he approached the Donkyo pirates and asked to join the crew. Law explained that he had 3 years to live, and since he's also caught the disease, he hated life. He then proceeds to join the crew but constantly get abused, overworked, harassed, and nearly killed. But through the 2 years he was with the Donkyo family, he learned to become a pirate. One day, Law reveals his full name to Baby 5, and Corazon overheard it, grabbed him, and warned Law about the severity of the name D. Corazon reveals to Law that he was an undercover marine and follows his brother Dofi in hopes to stop his madness. Corazon then runs away with Law to hopefully find a cure for his disease at different hospitals, but comes up short every time, until they heard about the Opi Nomi, which could be used to heal Law. They managed to get to the island where the fruit was being guarded before Doflamingo and his crew, and Corazon force-fed the fruit to Law. Virgo, an undercover pirate working for Doflamingo, discovered that the two were up to something and brutally attacked Law and Corazon, and then snitched to Doflamingo as he and his crew arrived on the island. Corazon realized that his death was inevitable and resigned himself to saving Law. He smiled at Law, saying that he would die with a smile, expressed that in hopes if Law ever thought of him while he was gone, he would remember his smile. Shortly after, Corazon placed Law into a treasure chest, placed a calm field around the boy, and promised Law that he would survive, and his final words being he loved him. Corazon then allowed himself to be caught to serve as a distraction, and Law could only sit helplessly in the chest as the Donkyo pirates violently killed Corazon. When Doflamingo arrived, Law cried in despair as Corazon was shot multiple times. The Donkyo pirates then left with their loot, including Law in the chest. Before they left the island, they were under fire by the Marines. While they were distracted, Law escaped them undetected thanks to Corazon's ability and walked away weeping over Corazon's demise. You have to accept, even if this isn't your favorite One Piece backstory, it's certainly the best. Just perfection from Oda. Anyways, that was the top 10 best One Piece backstories. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and comment down below your top 3 favorite One Piece backstories. Like I mentioned, we did take a little break, but we're back now for the long run, so expect more content in the near future. We've used our break to consume lots of anime manga, so expect different type of content too. Since everyone has a New Year's resolution, I'm going to be setting a goal right now for our channel. By the end of the year, this channel's goal is to hit 50,000 subscribers. Might sound outrageous to some, but we're overachievers over here, so trust, it will happen. Thanks for watching, and as always, I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.